Welcome to Mindful Live 130. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. It's been a while. This is my first live back in around 3 weeks, nearly a month, to be very honest, nearly a month. I was out on paternity leave, as I've said so many times already in the live. If you're tuning in over on TikTok or on Instagram, I've been out there on paternity leave welcoming my nice, beautiful daughter into the world, the little Princess Springer. But that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily. It's just the reason I was missing. And the reason that now I have a change of location. We're functioning out of a new studio now. But nonetheless, we're talking about some of the same stuff. We're talking about the budget. The budget came and went. Yeah, yo, True Ninja. Thank you. It's a pleasure being back. It's fun. The budget was read. And in the reading of the budget, some things seemed like, it's setting up for a more difficult time soon in the future. It seems like that, It seems like there might be some difficulties in the future coming up. And on top of that, the difficulties that seem to be right there facing us in the near future. Thank you, Florence. Some ministers, listen, PNM needs a PR team. I am not offering my services, but all I'm saying is I believe the People's National Movement, our ruling party, the governmental party in Trinidad and Tobago, would benefit greatly from a little public relations team. Somewhat, they need some group to send all their words to and let them, look at the words and see if they make sense before we allow these PNM ministers to make public statements, because they seem to be working assiduously to lose the upcoming election. They seem like they're trying their utmost best, and it's hard to lose an election to our current opposition. I'd say it's hard to lose an election to them, but our ruling party seems to be trying their utmost best. They do. You see, the budget was read, and one of the main highlights of the budget was the fact that fuel prices are going to be rising again. Sad reality. The way it has worked in Trinidad for a very long time is that fuel prices were subsidized by the government. So we weren't paying the full honest fuel price. Right? We weren't paying the full honest fuel price. We had a bit of a buffer that was given to us by the government to benefit in us paying these fuel prices. Yeah, they want to give Tanti Kams a fighting chance. They don't want to give her just a fighting chance. They want to give her the whole thing. Let people show their true colors. That's a good point. But yeah, the fuel prices set to rise. And on this note, we had the government ministers going out there, and they seem to be, trying to speak to the country and relate to the country and say that, this isn't the worst thing ever. And we have things we could do to, brace for this difficult time coming up. And one of the things that they mentioned was sacrifices. And in the tone they spoke about it, there was a quote that came up. Let them eat cake. And we're going to, this live tonight is talking about history. We're going into a history lesson tonight to talk about where that statement, let them eat cake, came from, why it is being talked about in modern times in Trinidad and Tobago as referring to our politicians over here, and how it actually does line up pretty well when you think about it. The reality of where that statement came from, actually, yeah, it seems to be lining up pretty well. Before we get into that, I don't know how many of you have already seen the video I dropped on this already. Mindful Education is up and running. That's the education services, the education institution that is run by me personally. And what we do offer are pod classes. Yes, this is an ad spot. If you are interested in such, you know where to reach me. But this ad is for me. Mindful education, and what we are offering right now are pod classes. Pod classes, pod learning pods, however you think you want to call them. The idea is homeschool style teaching, where it's really small classes, really personal attention, where the teacher and the students get to know each other. The students get to know the other few students in the small pod learning group with them, and it gives the comfort to learn more. It gives a comfort to learn more, and it allows for more personal attention in teaching. That's what we do offer right now. We're offering that from preschool classes straight up to CXC. Preschool, there are preschool classes, there are lower primary and upper primary, and there are lower secondary and upper secondary classes. So if you are interested in such, or you know anyone that might be interested in such classes, feel free to head over to Instagram, mindful_education, mindful with the 2 L's as per usual. Mindful education. You can feel free to head over there and follow that page and find the contact information there, get into contact with us, and feel free to register. There are also private tutoring classes offered if you are interested in such. As usual, that's what we have been doing for some time. But also the pod classes, if you are so interested. All right. First off, let's see what was said. Wait, who in the live too? Who in what live too are you talking about there, Mr. True Ninja? I don't know who is that in the live too. Let's get into actually what was said. So the first piece comes from a little snippet. And you all are going to hear why this sounded so ridiculous. You all are going to hear exactly why this sounded so ridiculous. All right, let's get into that first little snippet there. If you are, as per usual, I'm streaming this live on TikTok, on Instagram, and over on YouTube. If you are streaming this over on TikTok or on Instagram, you can feel free whenever you like at the end or whenever to head over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel Nathan Springer over there. You can catch, we are on Mindful Live 130. If you are just stepping in and you're like, hey, who is this guy? This is a new live, it's interesting. Yes, this is Mindful Live 130, which suggests that there are 129 others. Yes. If you are interested in those, you can head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer over there. You can catch all the other, well, most of the other lives, and there are other videos that are made there. Head over there and subscribe and catch up on that stuff. The benefit over there also is that you are able to see what I am seeing, see the videos, see the articles as they scroll by, as I read them. So that's the benefit over there. Thank you, Mr. Richard Glubman. Thank you for being here. Good night, good night, good night. Good night, Charles. All right. So let's see. Let's see what our ministers said. Fun.
Looking good, well fed, because somebody else had to sacrifice then so that we can have now. So then why is it so hard for us now to sacrifice for the young children who are coming up?
Member of Parliament for Lubino Bonnie and West, Marvin Gonzalez, expressed a similar sentiment as he responded to those criticizing the further reduction in the fuel subsidy.
We may have to call our homes and our families together around a table and say, you know what? We can no longer afford to go to the movies twice a week, 3 times a week. We may not be able to bake ham every month.
Just by the way, how many people with families go to the movies 2 or 3 times a week? Because he spoke about families. I am interested to find out which person with a family is out there taking in movies 2 and 3 times a week. Like, listen, I don't mind movies when I was a single man, when I was an unmarried man way back in the days. I liked a good movie. But I could tell you, since I've been married, my wife and I probably what, 3 movies a year, if so much. Like, who watches 3 movies per week to have that kind of extra cash to cut back on the 3 movies per week?
I'll make my priority pie. We have to cut back
Just now.
because we have to re-up the movies twice a week or 3 times a week.
3 times a week in the
We may
movies.
not be able to bake ham every month.
Who baking ham every month? Who is baking ham every month? Listen, there are some Christmases that go by and people don't bake ham. It was only when I got more serious about grocery shopping, I even recognized that groceries actually have ham stocked outside of December. I used to think, as a young person growing up, that ham only came on the shelves at the end of November into December. It's shocking to me as an adult when I walk around and I'm like, oh, really? There's ham in the freezer in July? Absolutely shocking to me, because who is baking a ham in the middle of the hot year, in the middle of dry season, crop time, cane field burning down, kites flying, is Easter, carnival going on, Lent going on? Who bakes a ham for Lent? We're talking about a ham every month. Nonsense.
I'll make my priority pie. We have to cut back because we have to reapportion some of.
No. I don't know if you all are hearing that. She's making her presence felt. But the macaroni pie part, how could you say something so callous? How could you say something so callous? How is that possible? Who in Trinidad is going to cut back on macaroni pies? Macaroni pies are a part of Trini culture. Even when our Trini ancestors were suffering way back under colonial times, a macaroni pie on a Sunday was still something to look forward to. What are you talking about, cut back on a macaroni pie? What are you talking about? And is a macaroni pie a luxury thing? Like, really? Is macaroni pie luxury? That's where we reach to now? My 2 slices of macaroni pie on a Sunday have become luxury? Like, okay, I might agree. If you're viewing movies as a family, if you're a family guy, 5 members of your family, and 5 of you all jump into your car and go look at movies 3 times for the week, then obviously you have some money to cut back. If you out here baking ham all through dry season, well, obviously you have some extra money to cut back. But if you're talking about people's macaroni pies, like, those 3 things don't really go together. You don't mix movie 3 times a week and what was the other thing? That actually slipped my mind. You don't mix movie 3 times a week and ham every month with macaroni pie. Those 3 things aren't in the same category. Those three things aren't in the same category. It's like you're telling people about, you don't need luxury transport out here. You don't need to buy a Benz, or you don't need to buy a Porsche, and you don't need to buy a Lamborghini, or you don't need to buy a B13. Like, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is, it might be, I mean, people don't need they don't need macaroni pie to survive, but it's a little taste of the luxury on a Sunday. Jeez, man. Like, oh, how you gonna say macaroni pie? How?
Of the scarce resources to other important things. And sometimes our children may scream at us, and they might throw themselves into tantrum. And they may even throw shoes at us and break glasses. But that child, that young boy.
Wait. I heard this before, and I'm kind of confused if I missed something. Was there an incident about somebody throwing shoes or something? Where these shoes story coming from? Like, was that supposed to be like a clever, funny quip in the middle of the statement? Like, I honestly, I was trying to get the shoes, the relevance of the shoes reference, and I don't know if while I was busy with baby, yet something I missed. Like, what is the shoes? I don't understand the shoes. Like, the only political shoe thing I really know, of is with the US president. I remember the US president, George Bush, and that's quite a while ago. The US president had a shoe thrown at him some time ago over his war business in the Middle East and all of that kind of thing. But what is the shoes? Like, I don't get the shoes. I'm not sure what he's talking about with the shoes reference. And the whole business about children, I don't like it. I don't like it. Let's finish this.
But that child, that young boy, that young girl, must have no doubt in their minds that the decisions of their parents is for their greater good.
Vanessa Cutting, T6 News.
The reason I don't like that children example is it sounds to me, and you all tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like he's referring to the citizens of the country as children, and the government as their parents, making the best decisions for them, and these children who are adult citizens of the country are behaving like children and throwing tantrums. And the parents, must have the assurance of themselves that regardless of the tantrum these irrational children are throwing, that they are doing the best for them. Is that right? Is that really what he's trying to see to an adult population? Empress Roni is saying that it is kind of what goes on, and they're minding about 70% of, maybe so, but you're not only talking to the people you're minding, you're talking to adults out there. You're talking to sensible adults who have agency and could think about things themselves. You're talking to adults, and here's the problem in that. What you're saying there is that when an adult makes a complaint against what the government is doing, the government can look at it like an irrational child just making nonsense noise and ignore you, knowing that they know best. Mother knows best. Daddy knows best. Especially when looking at these politicians to put themselves in that category, I think is ludicrous. I think that's very unwise as a politician. You're putting yourself in the parent category. Now, the thing is, parents are supposed to suffer more than their children. If there is suffering to go on, parents are supposed to be suffering more than their children. Isn't that so? If you're a parent and the child and there isn't enough food in the house, you're going to feed the child first. You're going to go hungry because you're going to figure out some other way. That's what parenting is. So, how can you, as a parent, be driving luxury vehicles and watch your child walking and traveling, then watch the fare for traveling raise, and you decrease their allowance, and when they cry about it, you tell them, shut up, daddy knows best? What? Are you people crazy? Think about this. Think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. Your daddy drives a Range Rover, Autobiography, 2022 edition. And he has you traveling to and from school. And the taxi fare is about to rise. You were paying $30 to reach to school and back. Now, with the taxi fare rising, you're going to be paying $40 to reach to school and back. Daddy used to give you $50, that $30 in passage, and the $20 had you okay in school to buy something. You could have bought a little lunch and a snack for recess. You were living okay in school. Now fare going to rise, you're going to be using $40 out of your $50 allowance. And then daddy comes and says, well, son, we can't afford it anymore. We're dropping your allowance to $45 for the day. So now you have to pay $40 in passage. With a lower allowance, you only have $5 to scrunt with for the day. And then your daddy, when you look to your daddy and say, but daddy, you driving a Range Rover still. But daddy, you and mommy getting fat. I seen like all you really eating. Look how you seen all my collarbone, daddy. You seen my ribs. But you keep getting fat, daddy. You and mommy are getting fat. And he tell you, shut up. You're throwing a tantrum, child. Listen to daddy. Daddy knows best. Shut up. And use your $5. What? How does this make sense? Now, people have been drawing parallels between what was said by some of these politicians and a quote that became famous during the French Revolution. A quote that went, "Let them eat cake." The idea, well, the quote was attributed to one Marie Antoinette. She was the French queen, the Queen of France. Now, bear in mind, back in those days, she wasn't necessarily from France. Daddy's saying it's time to grow up. Well, if daddy is saying it's time to grow up, in this case, well, daddy should be growing up too. Daddy can't be using the family's resources to buy the Range and then telling me it's time to grow up and not use the family resources for me to travel to school. You can't be using the family resources for luxury and not let me use the family resources for necessity and then tell me it's because you like the family resources too much and you're too greedy. Heck, no. Maybe someone who uses less resources than daddy could come out and say, yeah, you too greedy. But not the person driving the Range off of a public servant salary. If you're driving executive vehicles, living in posh neighborhoods, and the only jobs you have ever kept were public sector jobs. That means it's taxpayers' money that pay for every bit of your luxurious living. You cannot come and say that the taxpayers are too greedy for taxpayer money when you live a life of luxury off of the same taxpayers' money. If you were some billionaire out in the private sector, and then you came into government and you wanted to drive your Range and your Benz and whatever, then you could say, well, I got this out there. But if you're getting money from the public purse, it's a whole different thing talking about grow up. Now, if you've been in enough of my lives, you know, I'm a proponent that Trinidad, I think we're too dependent on the government. I agree with that. But then at the same time, this same PNM government is the government that engenders and creates government dependency. And when the PNM government has gone out there and created this government dependency for the last 60 years, they come now to say that no, the country is too dependent on the government. We need to stop it. And then they say we need to stop it in order to save money to create more state enterprises. The PNM are specialists at creating more state enterprises. They're splitting HDC now into 3 different companies. Whenever a government creates another state enterprise or company, just bear in mind, think about things like this. Who are they going to pay to do the graphic designing to create the logo for that new state company? Someone is going to make money off of that. Who are they going to pay for the furniture to outfit the new office? Anytime they create these things, money is being spent. And this same government who wants to say that the government, you know, we have too much dependency on the government, which I do agree with, just by the way. I do agree with that. But this same government that says that creates the dependency. We'll get into third party soon, Josiah, because this quote gets into all of that too, I think. So we were talking about Marie Antoinette and the French Revolution. It's a history lesson. We're going into history. So what was going on? This is in the late 1700s or the 18th century, if you'd call it like that. Yo, hi Candice. Nice to see you here. What was going on in the late 18th century, the late 1700s in France was that France was broke. France didn't have any money. Part of the reason that France was broke was there was the American Revolution not too long right before that, 1776. Somewhere around there. I'm not an American. I don't need to remember that date. But the American Revolution, where America fought off the English or British colonial powers and said that we are independent and we are the United States of America, all of that kind of stuff. Grand. But the United States did not do that on their own. In order to fight off the world's strongest army at that point in time, they had to get a lot of money. And where did they get the money? Well, France. You see, France was also fighting England, and they wanted any other way they can get, you know, stick a little spoke in England's wheels, in the British Empire's wheels. So the French sponsored the Americans. They sent lots of money over to the United States so that the United States was successful. Yo, good night, Jaron. So that the United States, bless up to you 2 A's, so that the United States was successful in their attempt. And great for the United States, they threw off the British. Unfortunately for France, that left France broke. France did not have much money. And that's kind of a problem. The country starts to fall apart when there isn't much money. You can't pay for things for the everyday citizens. And back then, France was still very much a monarchy. They had a king, King Louis. Was it the fourth? King Louis. King Louis was married to an Austrian woman called Marie Antoinette. So she was back then the French queen. And there's a story that goes Just by the way, the French Revolution happened and they killed two of them, they cut off both of their heads. But there's a story that goes while the peasants, while the poor people of France were rioting in the streets, protesting, clamoring because they were hungry for bread, they wanted something to eat. Marie Antoinette, in one of her Porsche parties, looked out and said, "Let them eat cake." And you could guess that if someone is starving, to try to offer them some kind of expensive party cake is not really what they're looking for. But the statement became the statement became representative of the disconnect between the ruling class and those being ruled. That's what it was used of in throughout history. So when you hear people talking about that, the local politicians that spoke about the sacrifices needed to be made and that you can't be watching 3 movies per week and baking a ham every month, like people are actually doing that. When people say things like that, you say they're saying let them eat cake. It's a very similar attitude. It shows the disconnect they have. It shows that many of them are not aware of the realities of the common folk. Now, here's the reality of that statement. Mrs. Kojo, the rep for Tobago, said that the media is misrepresenting her statements. She didn't only speak about sacrifice, and that's true. I actually listened to her speech because she went out there and said, you know, what you need to do is listen to the entire thing and get the context. I listened to the entire thing and I got the context. I understood what she was saying. I don't think it makes it all that much better, but I do understand what she was saying. Now, here's the thing. Even if the media was misrepresenting what she said, do you know that Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France that was beheaded and went down in history as saying the callous words, "Let them eat cake," actually never said "let them eat cake"? She actually never said that statement. The statement was around before she was even born. It was already written in books. So obviously she didn't come up with the statement. The statement was attributed to her. The statement was attributed to her after her death. Now, the question is, why was the statement attributed to her? Because she was showing that lifestyle. Also, although she didn't say anything of the such. She never said let them eat cake or anything of the such. But she was showing that disconnected lifestyle because, as I was pointing out, France was in dire straits. They were broke. They were watching poverty as a nation in the eye. And at the same time that was going on, Marie Antoinette was out there throwing lavish banquets, expensive banquets. She was buying new palaces and outfitting them with really expensive furniture imported from here and there and everywhere. And on top of all these things she was doing, spending money lavishly, her very person, how she looked, she was covered in expensive makeup and expensive clothing from head to toe. Marie Antoinette was famed. Yes, she was also a big gambler, losing a lot of money in gambling. She was famed for her hairdos, where she would do her hair up into all kind of fancy styles, sometimes a foot in the air. It was said that she would have tiny jars of water from which she could water her freshly picked flowers that she would carry. Now, that is a level of opulence. The basic folk nowadays, they don't know that level of bougie. When you talking bougie, yo, Ria, good night. Of course, new location. You know, we had to change on account of the tiny person. But yes, when we talking about bougie, we don't even understand that level of bougie yet. Imagine you walking around with a freshly picked bouquet. Very likely had to be picked that morning, of exquisite, probably rare flowers. And when the flowers start to wilt a bit in the daytime sun, you reach into your hairdo and pull out a little exquisite jar and pour some water on your freshly picked flowers. You all don't know fancy yet. So that is why the statement "let them eat cake" was attributed to Marie Antoinette, because back then she was one of the most hated royals. People would look at her, look at what she represented, and they could feel the suffering going on. You see, when people are living generally comfortably, like if the most of France was living a comfortable life, they may not have even cared what the queen did. But when the country started to dry up, and then we're like, okay, things are starting to get a little hard, then they start to pay extra attention to what the leaders are doing. So similarly, here in Trinidad and Tobago, we could look at the same thing. So all right, maybe when Trinidad was on the top of the oil boom, maybe some people didn't pay that much mind to what clothes the politicians were wearing, to how expensive they decked themselves out. But when we're talking about pinching pennies now, and we're talking about sacrifice and putting the money into the really important places, then people start to look at, why do you have a Louis Vuitton bag? People start to look at, why do you wear makeup 24/7 and all your makeup is always professionally done? To have makeup professionally done is a price. Why are all your weaves regularly changed and they're all human hair of the most exquisite sort? How come you look like you're just packing on the pounds? If we're not supposed to be baking ham every month, how come so many government ministers look like they're only putting on weight? From the time they enter into power, they keep packing on the pounds. If we're not supposed to be baking that ham every month, Mr. Gonzalez, how come so many of your fellow ministers keep getting fatter and rounder as the time passes? Good night, sit, go. And the problem is, when things start to get tighter, these questions start to get more important. And for you to be benefiting off of the people and then turn around and tell those same people when things start to get more difficult that they need to sacrifice, it kind of seems a bit difficult. It's a difficult ask. I really don't want to vote, but I also cannot let the opposition come into power. What should I do? Sir, I do not know. I really do not know. I speak about this very regularly. People who hear enough of me know that, listen, I'm not a fan of the opposition either. But this that the government is doing seems to be like they have a wish to lose the next election. And I don't know. You're asking me a very complicated question there. I don't know. But here's the problem. I saw some people speak about the alternatives. And if people were paying attention, we would vote in an alternative and get double G inside there. Get one of these alternatives that are talking out there, get them in. And you see, that's what France did. When Marie Antoinette was doing all her hairdos and all of that, the French people got very upset. They were like, you are wasting our money. We have to get rid of the monarchy. And that's exactly what the French people did with the French Revolution. They took over the country and the people ruled. Here's the thing. People don't rule. A person rules generally. And one of the top guys that took over after clearing the monarchy was a guy named Robespierre, however you pronounce it. It's a French name. Robespierre. Robespierre, however you pronounce it is fine. And he was one of the leaders of the revolution. And this guy seemed to have had a penchant for removing people's heads from being attached to their bodies. The guillotine was their favored move. So you went from the opulence and wastefulness of the French monarchy to the terrifying tyranny of the despots in charge of the French Revolution. You see, once he started cutting off people's heads, it seemed like He got a taste for it. He enjoyed it. And the thing about people that come into power, and they come into power by throwing over the people that were in power before, they are always very paranoid about who is going to throw them out of power. You see, if I came into power by throwing the person that was there out of their place, I would always be concerned that someone else is going to do the same thing for me. So Mr. Robespierre began executing people close around him. Some of his best friend from childhood, he removed his head. Thank you, Akel Brown. Much appreciated. He removed his head. Because you cannot trust anyone. You're always on the lookout who is going to take my place. And do you know, probably 2 or 3 years after he cut off the king and the queen's head, Mr. Robespierre himself was decapitated on the guillotines. The same guillotine that took off Marie Antoinette's head took off Mr. Robespierre's head too. You see, that's the thing about change. Very often, change is exchange. And you could easily jump from the proverbial pot into the fire. It is very possible. In fact, it may even be likely. That's one of the problems with the political system on a whole. The kind of people that often put themselves up for political power are oftentimes the very people that we don't need there. If you think about it, think about the kind of person generally, usually the kind of person, if you put a question out into the country and said, who thinks that they know how best for everyone in Trinidad and Tobago to run their lives? If you put a question like that out to the country, do you think you would get the most humble, respectful people saying, yes, I can? Or would you get the most arrogant, narcissistic kind of people putting their hands up? It's just kind of the nature of politics, the nature of political office. The kind of people that tend towards those offices are kind of usually that kind of person. So sometimes the person who is in the office looks like a scary person. We need to get rid of them. And you throw them out and you recognize, wait, we voted for Robespierre. We had the monarchy spending out our money before that. And now we have this madman cutting off everyone's heads. And then after that French Revolution, the whole thing devolved back into an even further form of tyranny, even stronger than the monarchy was, with Napoleon Bonaparte, the guy who came into leadership in France and actually tried the pinky and brain business, where he actually was out there trying to take over the whole world. So that was the end of all of that, of all the change and exchange and who would be better and who would be, that's what you get. So they talk about some other party automatically being better. I am not one to lean into that belief so quickly, because that's generally not how it goes. Only narcissists would answer. I was just saying that. Correct. Who even goes movie thrice a week? That's what we were talking about. But as I was saying, Sig Trigger says, all along Gigi was always heading into politics. Him as commissioner was politics. Don't think he would lead Trinidad well. Well, he started off as a politician. There was no doubt about his aspirations. Oh, yes, Rooney, that Tobago business. Tobago is learning that so well. They're learning that so well, that people that come in and say they're going to do better don't automatically mean they're going to do better. You know, just telling you and promising you I'm going to do better than the people that are here doesn't automatically realize into some kind of superior ruling system. That's just not the way life goes. Now, while we are moving in the direction of getting more expensive fuel, our neighbors Guyana, because you know people Many people in Trinidad these days of late like to point at Guyana and Barbados, our neighbors, to, compare us in Trinidad and Tobago. I remember some people were talking about Barbados, and Barbados was doing something to, decrease their fuel prices of not too long ago, and people were boasting about that and saying, look how Barbados is doing. And I remember doing a video where we broke down Barbados's debt. We spoke about the fact that Barbados is already in the clutches of the IMF, and we spoke about how dangerous that was. I don't know how many of you are some of the OG viewers of the live and remember when we went into that. We went in depth into that. We read a report coming out of the US Congress on Barbados's financial situation. And what would you know? I was reading an article, I don't know, that could have been 2 or 3 weeks ago, that spoke about the fact that now Barbados is further in a tighter clench from the IMF. Surprise, surprise. But to the next comparison that is often made, Guyana. Guyana has recently announced they're moving in the opposite direction than Trinidad. What would you know? Let's see what that headline sounds like. Breaking: government slashes gas diesel prices at Guy Oil. All right, Sitgo asks Nathan, what do you do for a living? No, I don't mind you asking. I do multiple things. I teach, I'm a tutor. As we said, good thing you said that, we'll speak about that now. Make sure to put that in here. Mindful education. We have launched our pod learning classes. The pod learning style are small homeschool style classes, usually maximum 6 students, where the teacher, the tutor, and the students can get a closer, more comfortable relationship, and the students with each other can also get a more trusting relationship. So learning becomes easier in these more comfortable pods, and it allows for much faster learning and a wider learning spec. Also, what it does is it increases the curiosity. That's the design of what it does. It increases the curiosity, where the aim is to allow students to pull themselves into learning, where they are to get the desire to find things out, the desire to learn, and that's also what the pods present and provide. If you're interested, or you know someone who may be interested in learning in this pod style, feel free to head over to mindful_education over there on Instagram. You can follow us over there, and the contact information is there. Contact us to register. There are also private tutoring classes available. So Sitgo, that's part of what I do. I am also in construction. My father does contracting. I'm also in construction, and teaching construction online, among some other things. Where the beard nest for asks, well, the beard and mustache had to go because I was on paternity leave. I'm reiterating this for those who came in late. I was on paternity leave for around the last month or so, welcoming my daughter into the world, and I had to, make sure to make that sharp first impression. My daughter had to see that her daddy is a handsome, sharp, strapping lad. I had to make sure that she recognized that. So, we had to make sure all the contours of the face were showing, and so when you smile and you touch the cheek to cheek, the daughter feels nice about that. Don't worry, they may return very soon. It was just for, for the first time, new time father business. All right. Thank you very much, Simply Candy. Thank you very much, Shane R. So yes, breaking: government slashes gas and diesel prices over on Guyana Oil. In Guyana Oil, the government has slashed the cost of gasoline and diesel from the Guyana Oil Company Limited in a bid to bring further relief to consumers across the country, a release from the Ministry of Finance announced on Saturday. Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh, today announced on behalf of the government a reduction of gasoline and diesel prices at the pump to be charged to the Guyana Oil Company Limited. The prices at the pump charged by Guy Oil will be reduced as follows. Gasoline prices reduced by 20% from $269 per liter to $215 per liter. Now, being the curious guy I am, I had to find out around what price was that in TT dollars. You know, we're not dealing with Guyanese dollars over here. We're trying to understand what this means in rational TT dollars. And 215 Guyanese TT dollars works out exactly to $6.97 TT dollars. Which is interesting because that's exactly the price of gasoline here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, with the raised price for super gasoline we're talking about here, super gasoline in Trinidad and Tobago is $6.97. So, with the new slash in gas prices that the Guyanese government did, their prices are now at parity with Trinidad's increased prices. I think the context still makes sense for us to understand. Good night, Roni. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your night. Have a good one. I think the context makes sense for us to understand. Even as Guyana slashes their gas prices, they have slashed it and it has now reached the same level as our increased prices. That's for gasoline. The diesel prices are reduced by 15% from 265 per liter to 225 per liter, and 225 Guyanese dollars transferred to TT dollars is $7.27. That's nearly the price of premium gas in Trinidad and Tobago. Diesel in Trinidad and Tobago is $4.41. $4.41 for diesel here. $7.27 is the reduced price for it over in Guyana. I think context makes sense. Understanding the context. It seems like they may not, at least not announced, Mr. True Ninja. So even with our increased prices, even with our politicians trying to do their best Marie Antoinette act, we are still on the better end of consumer fuel prices using global standards. Now, that isn't to say that it's a good thing that the prices are rising necessarily. It's just to say context is still important. So that even as if you think it's better that the government spend our money on fuel subsidies, even as you argue for that, you understand still that our fuel prices are comparatively low on a global scale. That makes sense to always keep in mind. All right. I think that's where we end tonight, folks. This first live back after quite some time. It was nice. Any further questions or comments before I dive out and go, love up baby girl a little bit there? I have things to do. So any further questions or comments before we dive out? Thank you, Olive Girl. Much appreciated. Seems like that's it. If not, I hope you guys were educated, informed, or entertained. Would like to know your thoughts. My thoughts on what? On the NTA. That is Mr. Double G's party. My thoughts on the NTA. I don't know necessarily where my thoughts lie in terms of their policies because I don't really know their policies like that. But I'll put this, and I may talk about it some other time when I develop some more thoughts on it. But I'll put this. A lot of the new political movements in Trinidad and Tobago are actually being run by very much known political actors. They're known political entities. It's not like they're actually fresh blood coming out to show a new perspective on something. It's kind of same old in a sense. And especially when you're talking about a political atmosphere where there are two main parties, and the first past the post style of voting that we have is a style of voting that leans towards creating two main parties. It's just what it does. So voting becomes a strategic endeavor. You don't only vote for who you want, you vote against who you don't want. And with the prevalence of many small parties, it makes the decisions let me stop trying to complicate it too much. It makes a lot of people basically put all parties into one of two groups. Even if you're a new party, you're placed either into the pro PNM or pro UNC group. And if you're already a known political entity, it's even easier to place you in one of those two groups. New party, new name, it doesn't matter. You're generally placed in those two groups. And if you, as a quote unquote new political entity, has a lot of justifiable links to one of the two main sides, it becomes hard to take you seriously as a new force in the country, especially understanding that voting has to be strategic. You vote against someone just as much or even more than you vote for someone. I hope you all understand what I was saying there. All right. Thank you very much, folks, for tuning in. I hope you all understood that last bit there. We'll dive into that some other time. I have some thoughts being developed on the whole nature of the democratic political system. We'll talk about that. I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live tomorrow. Yes, we're starting back Mindful Live. We're back in the Mindful Live business. See you guys for the next Mindful Live tomorrow evening at 9:15 p.m. We start around 9:15 usually, and I will see you then. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. Head over to the YouTube channel Nathan Spring on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. Head over to mindful_education on Instagram if you are so interested. If you know any students who may be struggling or not struggling and just interested in being more in-depth in learning, pulling themselves deeper into learning, or getting a little help here and there, and you're interested in such, head over there. Be sure to register, and I will see you guys for the next one tomorrow. Peace out. It was nice. Tomorrow, folks. Peace.